we'll get it over probably sometime. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 25th Annual Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. I'm Frank Ridley. I'm the president this year of the Hall of Fame, and I'm very happy that you're here with us. Today, although it is the 25th Annual Induction Ceremony, we have been in existence since 1975. First couple of years we did not induct anyone, that's why it's the 25th now. Next year we actually will be coming up on our 30th anniversary as an organization. It is customary in the Hall of Fame to ask the first vice president to preside over the ceremonies. So without further ado, I will invite Joyce Gibson, our first vice president, to come forward.
I need to stand. Okay. How do you do, everybody? Thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate seeing all of you here. I just want to tell you a little something about why I got involved with the Hall of Fame. Every time I walked through City Hall and I saw the plaques of all these wonderful people that have passed through Meriden and have left their mark with the population, I thought I would love to be involved, and that's why I am. I've also asked that any of you that would like to get involved, please don't hesitate. We have nomination forms in the booklets. We also like you to become involved and become part of our organization. Without further ado, I am going to ask Reverend Perry Beaver, the pastor, to please step forward and just do a blessing for us. Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you today. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Oh God, we give you thanks for the opportunity of living in a nation of freedom and for the opportunity of lifting up among us leaders who work for the good of all. We thank you for these examples of what our nation is all about. And we give you thanks that these leaders can continue to inspire us and others. As we induct these leaders into our Hall of Fame, may they continue to be an inspiration for the generations to come as to what has made our country and our community great. Bless this event and bless those we honor this day. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. At this time, I'd like to invite our Honorable Mayor, Mark Benigni, to step forward and just, if you won't mind, say a few words.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce. Welcome to everyone to the beautiful Curtis Augusta Cultural Center building.
Whenever I come to these events, it really is humbling to see and recognize those who really made a great difference in the city of Meriden. So this year, we have 3 award winners who are here to actually receive the award, and we've recognized them still during their lifetime. And I think that's unique. In some past years, people have received the recognition and we're recognizing family members rather than the actual award recipients. So to Elsa, Albert, and Willard, I say congratulations and thank you. The city of Meriden is so fortunate to have so many people who care deeply about our city, about our citizens, and about making sure Meriden is a great place to live and do business. And I credit you on your accomplishments. I thank you for your involvement. On behalf of the City Council and the City of Meriden, I wish you all the best. I say thank you, congratulations to you and your family, and enjoy your day. Thank you. That's okay, Jody.
Okay. First, I want to say that Elsa Hotchkiss Bradford, who is our first, excuse me, Frank said something to me, now my mind's gone away here, and I'm going, what did he just tell me to do? But anyway, in business and commerce, we recognize Elsa for her wonderful work that she's done for Meriden. To present her award will be her son, and his name is Samuel C. Bradford. So if you would step up, Samuel, and I will give you the plaque. You can, as a matter of fact, you can talk about your mom. And
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Members of the Hall of Fame committee, past honorees, today's honorees, our mayor and other distinguished guests. This is a great occasion, and I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to speak on behalf of my mother, who has certainly accomplished much in her life as a parent, a business leader, a civic leader, and a world traveler. As you know, and if you've read the bio, my mother rose to prominence in an industry, electrical supply industry, which is an industry that is traditionally and continues to be dominated by men. And one might ask, how does a woman come to gain prominence in such an industry? Well, to understand that, I think you need to look back, is really the result of a twist of fate. When my father was 45 in 1975, he passed away unexpectedly. And while that is not unique, many of us do suffer the loss of a loved one prematurely. It's how an individual responds to a traumatic event such as that in their life that may really define the course of their life thereafter. My mother rose to the challenge and has accomplished much. To understand, I think, the strength and fortitude that she brought to this challenge, you need to look back at her childhood. So I'll speak briefly about that. My mother had a relatively humble childhood. Her father was a farmer. Her mother was a school teacher. Her father died when she was 4 years old, so she never really got to know him well. And her mother continued to work as a teacher to support my mother and my mother's brother, Paul. And eventually my grandmother, Elsa's mother, was quite successful in teaching and rose to become a principal within the Hamden school system. She instilled in my mother a tremendous value for education and the benefits that a good education can bring you. And my mother did excel academically in all of the core curriculum, as well as her favorite passion academically was Latin. She took many years of Latin, which she continues to remind us of these days. With her outstanding academic credentials, she was admitted to the prestigious Vassar College for Women, where she majored in art history. Subsequent to her graduation, she had a job in that field at the Wadsworth Athenaeum. She met my father, and they were married. She followed him to Germany, where he served in the Air Force while she started raising a family. So that's some background. Now, if we fast forward to 1975, that's when my father passed away. my mother chose to continue the business rather than sell it. There were certainly opportunities to dispose of the business, but not only did she need an income, but it had always been the intention within the family to perpetuate the business if possible. The business had been passed down from my grandfather to my father, and if all things continued to go well, it would be passed along to my generation. So under my mother's leadership, the business grew and expanded. In 1985, she oversaw the planning and design and construction of a large facility on Pondview Drive, which is off of Research Park, but that's 23,000 square feet, which is quite an advancement from the very humble facility that we had on Pratt Street. Also, during this time, she was gaining a lot of recognition within the community and became active in a multitude of organizations. I'll read a few of them. She was a president of the Boys Club, a president of the Chamber of Commerce, a director of our local hospital under virtually all of its names, director of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. They bestowed upon her the honor of the Small Business Person of the Year. She was involved in the United Way, innumerable other organizations. You can read about them. So, active in the business community, active in the civic community, helping to advance the causes within the community. I entered the business in 1982 upon my graduation from college, and had the privilege of seeing Elsa in action as a manager. I knew her up until that point strictly as a mother. This was an interesting time. I mentioned her Latin. She had a passion for Latin. She has impeccable grammar. Now, the electrical industry is not one known for elegance, eloquence, or refinement, shall we say. In any given day, my mother would be dealing with people ranging from truck drivers to burly contractors, engineers, or even possibly executives in Fortune 500 companies. To see her have to tolerate, without visibly wincing, flinching, and writhing uncontrollably when someone would use a double negative, a split infinitive, or leave a dangling participle, was more than she could tolerate. And quite honestly, at times she simply wouldn't tolerate it and would offer some corrective advice to the offender, which sometimes diffused or sort of resolved whatever conflict was going on, because it kind of took the wind out of their sails. Another memory I have of her management style that's somewhat interesting was, again, I'm referring to the 1980s. Now, the 1980s was an era known for many things, including very bizarre fashions, outlandish hairstyles that we now refer to as big hair. And one day, an eager, ambitious young salesman of ours came into the company, and he had just had his hair styled in a manner that I'm sure if he was to look back at it today, he would think, what was I thinking? But he was quite proud of it, and after receiving much praise from his co-workers, my mother happened to spot him, and she approached him and she said, "Gee, John, that's an interesting hairstyle you have. When do you think you might get your hair cut like a real man does?" I don't believe he ever recovered from that. But I do still have occasion to see him today, and he has a very conservative hairstyle, so maybe they learned something. My mother continued to be very active in the business right up until the new millennium, when she pulled back and handed over most of the responsibilities to me. And now she's enjoying semi-retirement, I should say, but her greatest passion now is traveling. She's traveled the world. She's been to more countries than I can count. But let's not get confused and think that she's actually relaxing. As her travel companions can attest, she establishes exhaustive itineraries, she wears them out, and she intimidates the guides because very often she knows more than the guides do about wherever she's visiting. So that's what she's enjoying today. When she's in town, one of her favorite activities is her involvement with the Meriden Foundation. Here she can help kids from modest backgrounds, much like her own, steer them towards positive academic and educational experiences, and help instill in them the kind of values that she has held so dear to herself. So I'm very honored to be here today to present this award of recognition to my mother, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Well, we thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Just a few. If I had read my son's introduction, I wouldn't have to make all these notes.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, you sound like you improvise very well, so we'll go start.
As Sam said, I was working at the Wadsworth Athenaeum prior to marriage. And then when we were married, we spent some time in Germany when my husband was in the Air Force. And when I came back, the first things I got involved in after having a daughter and a son, I of course became a Brownie leader. Then I became a Coast Guard leader. You do all these things because they say, you know, there won't be any proof if you don't do it. And so we're going to do it. And the only civic things I was involved in were, I was on the board of the YWCA when I was in my 20s. I guess that was the first thing I did. And I did some substitute teaching, which was very interesting. A couple of stories I would have to tell you. I was teaching Paul Crone. I'm sure everybody in American knows this teacher at Black High School. And of course, when you substituted a situation like that, all the kids change suits. If you have a seating plan and you know there's a girl in the first seat in the left, well, there's a boy there. So you never know who you're talking to. And they told students that were very difficult to teach because you don't know who you're dealing with, etc. And they do all they can, you know, to confuse you. Well, they said to me one day, one of the fellows in Paul Crone's class, you know, Mrs. Bradford, Mr. Crone was a very fine teacher. And I said, that's what I understand. He said, yes. It's so amazing. You know, he's a skier and a tennis player. And he could be talking to you about history. And then all of a sudden, you've learned a lot. And he's really talking about tennis and skiing and things like that. And that's a very good way to be. So I well, that's something to remember. Well, when we were living in Germany, I was an officer's wife, so I wrote for the officers' wives newspaper and interviewed generals' wives and things like that. You can't hear her? You can't?
No. And it's interesting.
Oh, that's good. But as my son said, when my husband died at untimely age of 45, I had three choices: to sell the company, to hire someone to run it, or to run it. And why should I pay someone else when I could do it myself? I had worked there when I was first married and thought, why is my husband interested in this place? This is really an awful place to work. And who would know that some years later, I would be running the company and that was my work. And it was very interesting to be that. And I was written up in one of the electrical magazines called Electrical Wholesaling. And the title of my article was, the article about me, A Woman in a Man's World. And that was, as Sam said, it was a predominantly male industry. And so it was very difficult for me, as I had seen my husband take good customers out for lunch and so forth. I would try to do the same thing, but I would never let them pay the bill. Because you know how men are, they have chauvinist, etc. They pay the bill. But I finally persuaded them. When we were down on Pratt Street, before I built the new building, I was a smoker. And one day, there was a lot of paperwork involved in this job. I knew I had a cigarette burning somewhere. I was looking around the desk, I put my tongue with it. And I saw a little round brown circle forming on a piece of paper. I put a paper right down on top of the ashtray. Well, that was the end of my smoking of the day. Just bored and burning the place down. And so we ended up building another building, which was kind of a drastic way of not smoking in the daytime. When I joined the National Association of Electrical Distributors, persuaded by some of the people who call on us manufacturers, that was a wonderful thing for the benefit of our company, etc. I learned a great deal, which I did. In fact, I used their Bible on how to build a facility for an electrical company from their book, because I had a great study how to do it. Certainly the one downtown wasn't very successful. It's 3 or 4 stories and additions and so forth. So we did come up with a very nice building on Pondview Drive. When I went to the NAED, I met a lady from Massachusetts who had inherited a similar company. So we became fast friends, and we served on panels on how to approach business from a female point of view, etc. And one morning, when you go to these national conventions, all of the manufacturers have breakfast, lunches, dinners, and which you're invited. So Phyllis and I were walking around looking for a place for breakfast. And we saw a table with 3 fellows sitting there and 3 empty places. And I said, could we join you? And I said, well, certainly that would be very nice. And you wear these tags that say Elsa, Bradford, Connecticut, elected the town, the state, and my title, president. And Phyllis had the same thing, obviously a different company. And the fellows looked at each other, and then they looked at us. And they big grins. And they said, come on now, girls, who's ready? What guy is really home running the company? So that's the sort of thing that you run into. Everyone assumed that when I took over the company that I would fail miserably, so I got calls from all of our competitors to buy the company. Fortunately, we did not fail miserably, much to the distress of 2 or 3 of them. So what really happened was very unusual, in that I was really an art historian, and that's what I liked as a fellow's Latin. And I became an electrical distributor, which I thought was a very boring thing to do. And I began to really like it, and that's how I got involved in all of these different things, because I was recognized for the business acumen that I had hopefully accumulated a little of, and became a director of CBIA. In fact, Ron Meone and I were inaugurated into CBIA at the same time. We were both directors for 4 years, back in the 80s. And Ron and I also worked together as co-chairs of the YMYW fundraiser. And I saw a lot of Ron during those years. I miss him a lot. As far as the Rotary, my son, I'm proud to say, is the president right now of Meriden Rotary. And I was the first female in Meriden invited to join the Rotary. And I gracefully declined. I said, well, why did you decline? Which was very nice to be asked to join the Rotary. So you're absolutely right, but I think it should be a men's club. Well, that was very distressful. The person was asking me, but there was a man in Wallingford who thought I was the greatest thing that ever walked, because he thought it was awful that they joined the Rotary. George, I'm sure, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I said, I never noticed a lot of men rushing to join AUW, which is locally called the College Club. I mean, they don't mind women have that club, and I think men should have Rotary. I still feel that way, although certainly some very nice female Rotarians. So I think you've covered everything else. So, but I am very honored to receive this recognition, and Walt Shammick, I believe, was the person who brought my name up, and so I'm grateful to him also. And thank you again, and I'm happy to be in company with such distinguished people as Alan Brooke over there. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elsa. And as Elsa just spoke, Walter Shammick was the one that presented her name. In the forms, you can fill out these nomination forms, and if you know somebody that was a mentor to you, or that has touched your life in some way, in some positive way, we would love to have them presented to us. So please, take the forms and keep them, and if you think of somebody that you would like to present to us, get it to us. We would love to hear about it. Thank you. At this time, we are going to, for community service, and Elsa had so much community service, she must have been a good runner-up, is Albert Cirillo. Mr. Cirillo will be presented by Diamond Belichick. And we thank you, Diamond, if you would step up and say a few words. And actually, Tom Cirillo is going to present his dad with the plaque. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome everyone. And I congratulate Mrs. Bradford and Dr. Abrams on also winning this very historical award. I hope I don't have any dangling participles in my speech here, but I can relate to Mrs. Bradford because I'm a Latin major myself. So. And you are right about, I do the same thing at the hospital. I correct everything. I can't stand to see a run-on sentence, a misplaced comma. But I'd like to welcome you all here today. It is certainly an honor and a great privilege to speak about our next inductee into the Hall of Fame, Al Cirillo. What can I say about a man who does so much for others, with never a complaint or an unkind word, and who can never utter the word no? Well, I found the perfect description of all his qualities. It's summed up in a cartoon. In March of 2001, when Al received Mid-State's prestigious Crystal Obelisk Award for outstanding service to the community, the Record Journal ran the ideal tribute to Al. It shows a teacher sitting in front of the class, and she says, "Class, how do you spell community service?" Little boy is raising his hand and says, "That's an easy one. A-L-C-I-R-I-L-L-O, Al Cirillo." Next to that is Mid-State's stamp with Al's picture on it. It's Mid-State's stamp of approval. It says our hospital is not only in the blank, but it's also in the pink, thanks to lots of people like Al. If ever there were a role for a Mid-State ambassador to the community, Al would certainly fill the bill. Al has been a dedicated volunteer at Mid-State Medical Center since 1988, and I know that firsthand because I am the manager of volunteer services at Mid-State Medical Center. His loyalty and commitment to Mid-State is unsurpassed. He is a man filled with compassion and energy, a volunteer who goes above and beyond no matter what is asked of him. He will take on extra duties and work extra hours with never a complaint. He is always pleasant and charming and downright chivalrous to everyone he meets. He has been exceeding our customers' expectations long before we defined it in our vision statement. Exceedingly dedicated and committed to his volunteer role, he is highly respected among his peers and our staff, and a role model for all of us. He is the first person our customers meet as they walk into the main entrance at the information desk. With his charm, quick wit, and graciousness, he sets the tone for the rest of us. A member of our Board of Governors, Al provided leadership to our fundraising efforts by heading up the Board of Governors Division of the Annual Appeal for 4 years in a row. Al has devoted himself tirelessly and voluntarily in a multitude of community efforts dedicated to the betterment of our community's health. A few years ago, he was honored by the Mid-State Cancer Care Partnership for his outstanding service and dedication to our cancer program. A former president of the American Cancer Society, he at one time coordinated the Road to Recovery volunteer drivers who transport cancer patients to and from their treatments at Mid-State and elsewhere. He was also voted Mid-State's Volunteer of the Year in 2000. Someone once wrote to the Record Journal in a letter to the editor, and I quote, "Whoever coined the word volunteerism no doubt had Al in mind. The need hasn't been invented yet for which Al hasn't volunteered," end quote. But all of this rhetoric defines Al Cirillo as the consummate volunteer. Let's not forget about Al Cirillo, the man. I can only define his attributes and qualities in one word: gentleman. Webster's dictionary defines the word gentleman in several ways. He can be a man of noble or gentle birth, or a man who combines gentle birth or rank with chivalrous qualities, or a man whose conduct conforms to a high standard of propriety or correct behavior. Kind, compassionate, chivalrous, he is a gentle man in the true definition of the word. I'd now like to call upon Tom Cirillo, his son, to present the award.
Thank you, Diane. I would just like to thank the members of the Hall of Fame and the City of Meriden for giving us this opportunity. I'd like to also congratulate Mrs. Bradford and Dr. Abrams, who I know, on their induction. I just want to tell you that most of you, or a lot of you here, know what I do, and the reason what I do is because of the gentleman that's about to come up here. On behalf of the Cirillo family, it's a great day in Meriden, we think. And with that note, I would like to have Al come up, if I may, and congratulations.
Would you mind saying a few words? Would you mind saying a few words?
I have 42 pages here, but
I'm going to sit then.
good evening, or good afternoon, everybody. I got to thank Diamond and, where is he? John, where is he? Don, oh, there he is. For the helping me in this, and I congratulate both of you for your work. I read a book once, and it was called his name was David Dunn, and it's quite a story, and I have it at home, the book, if anybody wants to read it. But I got just a couple thoughts here I'd like to read to you what he has to say. And this is where I picked up several ways of doing things for people or wherever the needs are. A few years ago, this was done by David Dunn, and he called it Try Giving Yourself Away. I cherish this book because Mr. Dunn has gone into considerable detail the art of giving away. He has written so many ideas that will help one find many new friends and create firm friendships. I would like to share some of this thought with you. Never before in the history of mankind has the spirit of giving ourselves away been needed as it is today. No matter how great or how modest our talents are, how high or humble our station of life, there is something for all of us to do in this quiet routine of living that can help cure some of the ills of other troubled times. To be more specific, there are people, regardless of their age, in despair, need of help that could use a little of our time. Take for instance an elderly gentleman in failing health, looking out the window, and people who merely pass by wave to him, or sitting by the telephone that seldom rings while he's in the room. What a surprise it would be to reach a call and a friendly chat. That call will do more for him than a whole bottle of tonic. Now, I found a lot of this true when I had about 30 drivers to bring patients either to the hospital or to the doctor. And there wasn't one of them that would ever refuse me. The only time would be when they probably had a problem to do and couldn't drive. But this is a case where it shows you when you can get lined up people to do things like that, it really is a help to anybody. We had several times sorry, there's some, I don't know if there's any of my drivers here today. Is there any here? No, I guess they're all working. But I had them drive anywhere from Meriden, sometimes way up into Hartford, New Haven, or wherever the call was for. They were there, and they never said no. The other item on that, and what I'd like to tell you is, I was up in Boston, and up in Boston there was this hospital up there, and they were just finishing some work that they wanted to expand. And one of them was a room for children made bigger. And when I saw that, I came up with the idea and went to the president of the hospital, and I said to him, you know, there's nowhere that I know of in the country, at this time is, of a pediatric trauma institute. And I said, would you be interested in starting one here in Hartford, in Boston? And he became interested, so he got his people along. I also got about 6 of my fellows up there, and we all talked about it, and before you know it, we had a chance to start a pediatric trauma up there in Boston. And then we tried working it into Hartford, and I think it's still going. I know they started one. And these are the things that when you do something like that, if it's sincere, you know you can get somewhere with it. Just one more thing. I have been told that the man put on earth in order to strive for 3 obstacles in life. First, he has to earn a living. Second, to build a good and useful life. And third, to build a better world. These are the things that I thought I'd pass on to you. And thank you for all my relatives and friends that are here. And hope I can do something for you too someday. Thank you.
Well, that was certainly inspiring, and we can see why Al Cirillo is inducted into Meriden's Hall of Fame. At this point, for science and medicine, I'd like to award Dr. Willard Abrahams an award, and his presenter is Walter G. Alwang.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first say that my name is Walter G. Alwang, but everybody calls me Gil. In addition to that, Erwin Willard Abrahams is normally called Brooke. So if you hear those words, you'll know what I'm talking about, some people who aren't here. It's a great honor to stand before this society, which has done so much for Meriden in recognizing the exceptional achievements of Meriden citizens. I'm not a native Meridenite or Meridian or whatever you call it, but my wife Ginger and I have lived here for over 45 years. Our children are born and grown up here. We still have a number of grandchildren that still live in town, and we're very, very fond of this town, and that's why we're very happy to see organizations like this that have been telling us about the good things that are happening in Meriden. After I retired several years ago, I started teaching courses for the Meriden Power Squadron, which is part of a boating and sailing organization, a nationwide boating and sailing organization, and that's when I first met Brooke. Brooke actually had a lot of sailing experiences in all parts of the world, but he had never been challenged to learn about celestial navigation, and he wanted to learn celestial navigation by the stars. And so we started that course. It was a long, and I think he'll agree, a rather demanding course, so we spent a lot of time together, and uncomfortable things like going down to Long Island Sound in the middle of the winter to get the morning stars at 4 a.m. when the temperature was below zero, well, below freezing anyway. And so we got to know each other pretty well. We found that we had a lot of common characteristics, like we're both born and brought up in New York City. We both were naval officers. He, of course, was in the medical corps. And we both had a passion and an interest in boats and ships and sailing. And it was some time, I realized, of course, that he was an eye doctor in town, but I really had no great impression about what a kind of an eye doctor he was. In some of our tutorial sessions, when we were studying navigation, I was visiting in his house, and I found that there were all kinds of unusual artifacts hanging from the walls. For example, African masks, pictures of Afghan chieftains, spears, war clubs, in addition to a number of honors and awards from universities in China and in South America, and even from the government of the Bahamas. So it was obvious to me that a lot of things were going on besides being an eye doctor in Meriden. I found out gradually that he was also, and I didn't know this, was the past chief of staff of the Veterans Memorial Hospital here in Meriden, that he was a extremely well thought of professor at the Yale Medical School, an expert, a professor of ophthalmology, and an expert in a very complex eye disease called uveitis. He is the director of the uveitis department at the Yale Medical School, in addition to being one of the permanent officers permanent board members of the College of Medicine. Now I found out through looking at these artifacts that he had on his walls that he was also had a very distinguished record at medical service in poverty-stricken parts of the world on 3 different continents. The artifacts that he had on his walls were not obtained by recreational travel and purchase, but they were given to him, and he frequently traveled with his wife as well, given to him for services that he had performed, medical services for the people that he met in these countries. He was, for example, in Afghanistan before the Russians were there. He traveled from the southwestern corner where the border with Iran is, all the way up to the border with Uzbekistan, the Soviet Uzbekistan at that time, doing epidemiological studies as well as setting up a traveling eye clinic in various locations. He was in Africa on a program called Wings of Sight, in which he had to travel to very obscure parts of both Kenya, Tanganyika, and what was the other one? Uganda, of course. And the only way to get to some of these places was via bush pilot airplanes. Some very hairy experiences there. And then for his, these were all places in which there were endemic eye diseases, which had never seen any medical attention. His services in China earned him an honorary professorship at Hunan Medical College. He has wonderful stories about the various people that he met in all these odd parts of the world. One story that was very impressive, and he has many of them. In Afghanistan, there was one Afghan mullah who brought his daughter in for treatment of an eye problem, and the mullah was accompanied by 6 of his tribesmen, all carrying rifles. They brought the girl in, and Brooke was examining her while the entourage of people with rifles sat on the floor to see what he was going to do. This is what you might call a pressure job, I would say. And he found that the eye was beyond saving. And so I imagine it was a little bit touchy there for a while. And so he managed with some difficulty to get an artificial eye for the girl, and the mullah was delighted. I guess the fact is, in these countries, as long as she looked all right, everything was okay, because women don't have very much status over there. How he managed to get an artificial eye is a story I mean, if you let Brooke and Janet tell you about. But it was one of the events that he had. But he had many other compelling stories about the incredible suffering that people have in these parts of the world, from disease and from hunger, and at the same time, the amazing humanity and ability they have to survive under these extreme conditions. At any rate, after finding out all this about Brooks, after I really had been only in contact with him through boats, I was quite impressed, and so I was delighted to be able to propose him as a member of the Meriden Hall of Fame. I think that, I should mention also that he has tremendous academic credentials. He's written many papers for the scholarly medical journals, and he's members of all the various and fellowships of the Medical Society that are appropriate for an ophthalmologist and a specialist in his area of eye diseases. And it seemed to me, because of the services that he had done in this community of Meriden, and also to the community in the area here of New Haven, where Yale is, and his tremendous effort, really, outside of this area, in other parts of the world. He is an international known expert in the area of uveitis. And it seemed to me he's the best example, one of the best examples of the medical profession that I've ever met. And a consequence of that, I had nominated him for this award, and I was very gratified that the members of this organization have agreed that he should get this award. So I guess I will present it to him at this moment. Here's both of you awards.
Gil, you're fantastic. After that, what can one say? Basically, right. President Ridley and Hall of Fame members, Mr. Mayor, and ladies and gentlemen. Actually, it's with great humility that I stand before you today and accept the most important honor from my adopted home for the past 40 years. I came to Meriden in 1963 following my Navy service. I strongly believe that one could be a complete physician by bringing to the community and its patients the best of academic medicine and training, and to bring to academia the experience and knowledge of my private practice. Coincident with my appointment to the Yale faculty, I entered practice here in Meriden. Now, after just 4 years of practice, I was asked by the government to go to Afghanistan to do some vital medical and other work. I discussed this with my wife, and we felt this was quite important. Not knowing the effect on my young practice, we went anyway. It was a great insight into the people of Meriden that upon my return, I was told by a local pharmacist that my patients said, quote, "He's the only doctor from this area who has ever gone overseas to help other people, and we will certainly wait for him." My faith in the people of Meriden was not misplaced. The overseas experience had a profound impact on me. I realized that in a single day of work in an underdeveloped country, I could benefit and change the lives of a great number of human beings regardless of their race, color, politics, or religion. The following year, I was asked to go back to Afghanistan as consultant to a hand-picked geographic epidemiology team from Johns Hopkins for an extended period of many months in extremely rough and difficult conditions. This was a most important project for the Afghan people, World Health Organization, CDC, and for our government. Once again, I faced the difficult choice of leaving my practice and my family. My wife, who could not go at this time because of the nature of the mission, nonetheless encouraged me and said that I would regret for the rest of my life not doing this. She's quite a lady. I did go, and following this experience was committed to international medicine. I then attended the Yale School of Public Health while continuing my private practice. I was privileged to serve as Chief of Staff at Memorial Hospital for 5 years and see it greatly expand to its current size. Of course, I was an active member of both hospital staffs for the entire time of my private practice here in Meriden. I was also active in the town choirs of the Chamber of Commerce and was most happy to be part of their activities on behalf of Meriden. I subsequently worked and taught in Africa, Brazil, Peru, and especially China, where I worked for a period of 3 consecutive years. My wife accompanied me on all of these projects. In China, I introduced them to modern ophthalmology, their first exposure since the era of Chairman Mao, and established the first uveitis study in that country. I also performed modern eye microsurgery for the first time, and at Hunan conducted a 1-month training course for highly selected eye surgeons from all over China. For this work, I was appointed honorary professor of ophthalmology at Hunan Medical College, the only Westerner so greatly honored. Now, during my entire career, I've always been on the Yale faculty and attained to the rank of full professor in 1982, which I still retain. I was involved in teaching, patient care, and research, which has resulted in 30 publications and many more papers. Now, my commitment to private practice patients for 35 years was absolute until my retirement in 1988. I have continued my teaching and practice of medicine at Yale as director of the uveitis service, and my overseas medicine work as chairman of the overseas committee. Now, all of this would not have been possible without the understanding of my family and certainly the people of Meriden, for which I am most grateful, and I thank you all for this great honor.
Well, to our new inductees, I congratulate you all. I thank you all for coming. I thank your families for participating and showing such wonderful presence here. We all would like you to share some goodies with us, have a cup of coffee, some punch. There's a lot of calories over there waiting to be had. And if any of you would like to join the Hall of Fame, please join us. We'd love to have you. Thank you for coming, and this has been a spectacular day for me. I also want to say one more thing because Frank's pointing at me. Oh, the blessing, I'm sorry. I want to say something about the plaques. These plaques will be hung in City Hall with the other inductees. And I hope that you're inspired the same way I was and enjoy each and every one of them. The closing ceremonies will be done by the Reverend, if you would please.
Let us pray. Oh God, we thank you for this day, for the joy that we have found in these people, such as they are honored before us. Send us forth from this place to be the same kind of inspiration that they have been in this community, knowing that this community is what it is today because of them, and it will continue to be a better community of the witness that we all make. May we be a blessing to this community as they have been. Amen.
And I downplayed how intense she is.
I would just like to say that a lot of times, I happen to be the city clerk in Meriden, and I just have to tell you, because I know a lot of times you receive a plaque and you think that this plaque is just like put in a closet someplace or put up on a wall where nobody sees it. Forget it. These plaques are hung in the hallway at City Hall, probably thanks to our Mayor Benigni, because I think he gave us permission to hang them up. We started a few years ago. And there is not a day, not one day that I don't go to work that I catch someone reading these plaques, either on my way to lunch, on my way into work in the morning or at night. There is always somebody, and they're going down the line, and they may not read every one every time they come in, but they are always being read, and you're always being honored throughout your lifetime. That happens.
You too. No, but actually they had a race today. I wrote September 11th, they had a race. So I wrote there. Watch them smile.
And then we got called, hey, one's the mailman, I said, okay, John's the mailman. Sometimes John gets wrong. I'm going in ready? It was in New York. Oh, I'm sorry.
But this is
Supposed to be in together?
this is moving, so you don't have to be still.
Okay, we don't have to be still. We can smile and dance a little bit.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Good. Thanks.